Hello and welcome. It is All for United, and we're here for another Saturday Night Live. The opportunity for us to talk about all things Manchester United over the last week. I'm joined by a rather magnificent panel as ever. We have my adorable co-host just to my right here, Mr. RP Field, otherwise known as Dan. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm not bad, thank you.
Did you remember to unmute immediately? Brilliant work.
Yeah, well, for a change.
Getting used to it now, aren't you, mate?
It's the holidays. It's refreshed me.
And we also have joining us from just across that little stretch of water to the west, young Sarah Stacey there. How are you doing?
All good, thanks.
Excellent. Great to have you back on the channel. And of course, we have the immaculate, the amazing, the match-going season ticket holder himself, Mr. Andrew Wall. How are you doing, sir?
Yeah, I'm all right. Yeah, so good to be back on. It's been a while.
Good to have you back on. And whilst we're there as well, we've got a brand new viewer. So, Cal, nice to see you. Hope you enjoy the show today. So, we're all good. Let's see if we can have ourselves a little chitter-chatter about this retained list. We're going to talk about all manner of things. We've got fixtures, the retained list, Champions League, Takeover. We're just literally going to shoot the breeze for the next 45 minutes to an hour and sort of see how we're all feeling. But I think for me, the big one, I put on the thumbnail today, we had Ahmad and we had David De Gea and we had Phil Jones. And I think this retained list gives us a chance to look at both memories, to discuss also something that I think is probably still a bit rife in the game even now, but also it's this talk about De Gea, isn't it? And to me, I think that's where we have to start, because looking at the retained list, we've retained two goalkeepers. Tom Heaton has had his contract kept. He's been extended. Nathan Bishop as well. A lot of the retained list is youngsters. We know that. That's quite normal at a club this size. But David De Gea specifically not mentioned in it. When you look at the article they put out, they're still trying to negotiate with him. It's weird, isn't it, Dan? Because Ten Hag has said, I want to keep De Gea, we want him to stay at the club. But yet we don't seem to be having any movement. What do you put it down to?
I still maintain that it's not Ten Hag's position 100%. And I think we mentioned it a few times on the show towards the end of the season. There were starting to be cracks in his appearances in the media with certain players. I think Maguire's another one. I think he's backed most of them to the hilt for the last 3 months. I'm just starting to see a few cracks in the way he was speaking about David De Gea in terms of staying long term. I am a little bit shocked it's not been done, because all the reports suggested that it would be, or minimum the deal had already been agreed. But I think it's only 14 days away from his contract ending. And the closer we get to it, the more confusing it is. I just think there's not many lined up to sign him. If you believe the media, which honestly, I don't believe them when they were saying he was staying. I don't believe them when they're saying he was going. I won't believe it until I see it factual from the club, because as we've seen with other parts, a lot of these people just can't be trusted in they think they're in the know, let's say, and they can't be. My worry is Ten Hag doesn't want to keep him, and he may stay. From what I was reading, the reason he's not in the retention list is because his contract's not being renewed. The extension's not being signed. So in essence, it'll be a brand new contract if he signs one. It's not going to be an extension like some of the others. I personally don't think we should extend on the terms that he's on now. And I even think there was rumours of 200k a week. I don't understand how the club could sign him on 200 grand a week. He would be the highest paid goalkeeper in the league. And from the sound of it, he's being told that he might not be number one. And this is the problem with the club. I've said it a few times. We can't be paying a number two £200,000 a week and not look a bit like a laughingstock. That's more than Alisson and more than Edison together if we sign him on 200 grand a week. And that's just amazing for me. It's very confusing, the situation. I'm starting to wonder if there's a little bit of a power struggle between what Ten Hag wants and maybe what the club can afford. because he might want something that we can't afford.
Yeah, it's a bit of a weird one, isn't it, for sure. As Cal's put, it could be De Gea's not on the retained list, he's still negotiating his contract, which is exactly what you've just said there, Dan. The fact that they don't want to extend the contract he's currently got, they want to give him a brand new one, which would make complete sense, I think, in that respect. And evening, Connor, how are you? Sarah, where do you stand on all of this? Because, you know, I've said it before, people have asked me lots of times, does David De Gea need to go? I would still argue, unless we get ourselves a new goalkeeper, then absolutely he needs to stay. We need to have that goalkeeper lined up, ready to come into the club. I mean, Tom Heaton's decent, but he's not a number one for this club, is he?
No, he's not. I would agree with that. We do need to sign a keeper before we could really consider letting De Gea go. But yeah, I would be happy with, you know, the idea that he's not guaranteed to be number one. I think competition is good, especially the stage he's at in his career now. You know, like people have said a lot that he's past his best, and I mean, we've been kind of, you don't really know who to believe, I suppose. Like, you hear different conflicting reports every day of the week. It would seem that, you know, he wants to finish his career at United. But then I saw a headline the other day. I didn't click on it because I can't be bothered with a lot of these things. But like, it seems, so I don't know the ins and outs of the story, but it seems that he has maybe had a change of heart or something. Maybe he doesn't like the idea that, you know, he's not guaranteed to be number one. So, I mean, we can't say for sure, but it's definitely a possibility. So maybe that's what's holding things up, and he's not sure now about signing a new deal.
I mean, Andrew, you are a match-going fan. You are somebody who's in and around Old Trafford regularly. We're not. You know, the rest of us sat here, we're not lucky enough to be in that sort of position. What's the general feeling that you get from around Old Trafford?
It's a bit of a mixed one on De Gea. Obviously, his future at United is just looking bleaker by the day, because as it drags on to the end of June, it looks like he could have played his last game for the club. But I mean, talks have been going on with him since last year over new contracts, and from what I've read, he's been unwilling to accept a reduction. And then there's others that say he's willing to accept reduced terms and to stay as well. So it's like, what does De Gea actually want? I don't know. I mean, we probably overcommitted on his last contract, and we can't guarantee paying him the same amount of wages this time. And just thinking performance-wise, even though he won the Golden Glove in the Premier League, some of his performances, you know, were questionable, but he had a better defence in front of him as well this season. So I'm just thinking, like the FA Cup final, for example, his distribution and command of his penalty area as well. It's been a weakness in his game, and is that likely to improve in the next few years, even under Ten Hag? I'm not so sure. There's times I've been in matches, I'm like, when De Gea's got the ball, I'm thinking, sometimes get it out for the attack, and sometimes he's held it back, and then we're like, well, you know, the opposition's defence has just got back into, you know, their positions, and like we've just missed an opportunity. And there's and then other times it's been like De Gea's tried to get the attack going, but then it's the players in front of him haven't, you know, realised as well. But I think in like the FA Cup final, I think somebody put out a video. I think he lost the ball 13 times. So it's like, and he didn't have his best game in the FA Cup final. So some of the other players didn't as well. But I know former United player Roy Keane's, I know he's not the biggest fan of De Gea, and it's called for him to move on. So we've been linked with many different goalkeepers, but there's a chance he could still stay on reduced salary, but it depends what he's prepared to accept and the playing time as well. But I just think with De Gea, I think it's just come to a natural end, his time at United. I don't think it's best for all parties. Maybe he does move on. Look, he's been a great servant for the club. They say he'll be the last one, if he goes, that has won the Premier League. if he goes, then no one in that side has won the Premier League. So, but yeah, just saying maybe for best part is we all move on, which it forces United into getting in a replacement, and, so we'll see at the end of the June. Well, if he stays or he goes.
It's definitely an interesting one for sure. Boxer said he doesn't think that he thinks De Gea doesn't want reduced terms, which I think to a degree you can kind of understand. I think if you devoted the vast majority of your career to a team and then you're being asked to have reduced terms, I kind of see that. From a human point of view, you might feel a little bit let down, but then equally it's the nature of the beast. Over here we've got Annaline. He's put this could be the worst transfer window of all time. It's only been open a couple of days, but still, seriously, what's happening with the Glazers? For sure, these guys sleep well at night, wouldn't you? You're sitting on the possible £6 billion takeover. I'd be sleeping quite well as well, to be fair. And then we might be struggling to afford to buy a new goalkeeper, and of course, the budget has a massive part on this. I think that Cal's make a great point here. De Gea has been an amazing soldier for the club. He has. He's been at the club for, as we say, over a decade now and done really well. We get that he doesn't fit the new playing from the back style, but the disrespect he gets is uncalled for. And I think this is the thing. We're going to get into disrespect as we move on with the show. But sticking with the goalkeeping situation, as JR said earlier, our scouting department doesn't do anything. I can think of at least 5 keepers we can buy. Now, we can all do that. This is fantasy football. But the one that certainly seems to be rearing its head at the moment is Inter's goalkeeper, Onana. And I'm very intrigued to see how you guys would feel about Onana coming into the club, because I've got to say, to be honest, I would not be against that. If we could get Onana into the club, I think that's not a bad choice. But I'm intrigued to see what everybody else thinks here. So, what do you reckon, Dan?
Again, I think it just shows sometimes where the club's at. So Onana was available for a free, not a couple of transfer windows ago, and now we're looking like if we want him, we're going to pay 50 million for him. And this is a frustrating thing for me. We seem to lack the ability to go and, apart from the odd one like Garnacho for 400k or whatever it was, we don't seem to be able to identify talent and buy them before another club does, like Caicedo, Alvarez, Haaland, Onana, that would have been 3. It's a weird one. So now if you're telling me we're going to pay him 50 million for him and then 150k a week, it just baffles me what they're doing at club level. And this is my issue with the biggest issue with the Glazers for me, is they don't understand how to run a football club. They're not clued in enough to know what they're doing to do this sort of stuff. I just think there's lots of goalkeepers available, and the best player for the club isn't always the player that's going to cost 70 million, 80 million. Sometimes it's players that cost 10. And one of the best signings for Man United in a while in terms of squad was Dan James, and everyone hated him. And he's the only player that we made a profit on in 10 years, and he did an absolute job when he came to the club. And no, he wasn't pulling up trees when we signed him. He was just this quick little Welsh lad. So, I mean, I wouldn't be against getting Onana. It's just it's the principle of it again of we've missed out on a player for free that now we're spending 50 million for. And in terms of, I think that's exactly what most people are talking about. We could have replaced De Gea for free in a better way. And instead, it's going to look like it's going to go down to a scramble of his contract, and if we're actually going to sign somebody else or not. It's not gone smoothly at all, has it? We could get to the last week of De Gea's contract and not have a clue who we sign him, and he's leaving in a week. And that is literally typifies the Glazers' reign for me.
I mean, it's a fair point, an interesting point. Sarah, would you go along with that? Or is there an element of, would Onana even come to the club if he knew he was going to be playing back up to David De Gea at the beginning, which you would assume would have happened under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer? I can't imagine that he would have just said, come on in, you come, and I'll put you in ahead of David De Gea. That doesn't seem like the sort of thing that Ole Gunnar Solskjaer would do, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, that's true. I hadn't thought of that, but it makes perfect sense. I do agree with all of what Dan said. You know, it's just it always just seems that bit more chaotic with us than it does with other clubs. And then, like, I can't count the number of times we've signed somebody and it's come completely out of left field. And, you know, rather than we've been linked with a certain player for weeks. And even when you look at who we brought in on loan in January, like that was, I know like injuries create kind of unforeseen situations, but it just, you can kind of feel the panic in a lot of the deals that we do, rather than considering who is right for the role. And I mean, would I be happy if we signed Onana? Yes, because I think, you know, he does fit the kind of the profile, as they say, and you know what we're looking for in a keeper and playing from the back and stuff. And obviously he's just been in a Champions League final. And but like, I only really heard about these links after kind of reading that Chelsea were in for him, and then it's like they're not suddenly not interested anymore, so we're the front runners now. But yeah, I mean, if we had the opportunity to get him for a lot less, and of course it's a problem now with players probably being overpriced. I mean, you know, Declan Rice is a good example. I mean, he's undoubtedly a quality player, but is he worth the price tag that West Ham have put on him? That's, you know, another situation. But yeah, I think, I mean, I'd be happy if we got him, but you do have to question the way that the club are doing business.
It's a very interesting one for sure. And Boxer said maybe go for a cheaper goalkeeper like Lafont, Verbruggen, Chevrolet. Weren't they our sponsors not so long ago? The shirt. Mamardashvili, 10 million to 25 million. Honestly, every single one of those sounded like cars, Box.
So Verbruggen, it looks like he's on his way to Brighton, who already have Steele that's really good at playing out from the back. And this, I think, honestly, this is going to be another example. So loads of people are called Verbruggen to be signed. We're not going to sign him, even though he's 12 to 20 million. And in 2 years, if we've not fixed the goalkeeper, we'll be linked 50 to 60 million to sign him to fix it.
It's quite possible. I can't argue with you because it is the sort of thing that we do. But then, do we have to argue the fact that Man United need players that are going to be pretty much there, especially for the goalkeepers? You know, I think when you look at how some of these players are treated, and we're going to get to that, like I say, it's a tricky one, isn't it? Because the fans aren't known for their patience sometimes for some of these players and given the ability to learn on the job. But we shall see. Jennifer's put, we'll always manage to find a great goalie. Schmeichel, best as ever been. Bartes, mad as a box of frogs, but brilliant. Van der Sar, De Gea. Andrew, do you go along with this? I mean, tell us, what do you think about Onana? Would you like him? And if not him, then who? Because I think it, as Dan does say, it does feel like it's coming to a sort of a natural end, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think Onana's been one of Inter's standout performers this season, and he fought valiantly in the Champions League final to stop Man City winning their, treble. But yeah, he's attracting interest from numerous clubs. As Sarah said, Chelsea have appeared interested, but like I say, whether they'll follow through on that interest is another question. But I think it makes perfect sense for United to go for him. I think Inter's struggling financially as well, and will probably need to sell their big name players as well to ease their money woes. So Onana could be the one they let go as well. And I mean, his supply performance this season earned him, I think he earned him in the spot of the Champions League best keeper this season. So and as United are back in that competition next season, so and he's been the best shot stopper, so it might make sense to maybe bring him along for the ride with us. But if it's, I was going to say, with goalkeepers now, the evolution of goalkeepers has changed now. Rather than, you've got to be more than just a shot stopper. You've got to be like commanding of your box, a sweeper keeper. Anticipating the danger from the opposition. De Gea's, he's slightly got better over the course of this season, but there's been cracks in his game. He's trying. I'll give him that, but it's just whether he can get any better, I don't know. But if it wasn't to be Onana that we signed, I think from what I'm reading, probably the number one choice is Porto's Diogo Costa. So I think he had 16 clean sheets in the league. I think he conceded 22 goals. So So, say one of his main attributes is his distribution and ability to command his area, which say sometimes De Gea doesn't have an abundance of, but also he's a very young goalkeeper, so he's got time to develop. So, but with Costa as well, it just comes somewhat with the air fee of I think it's estimated might have to pay like over 60 million for him, but given his ability and age, could be the right move for him. But I think we're going to be linked with De Gea goes, then we're going to be linked with goalkeepers left, right, and centre. So it depends who comes through the door.
Just about anyone everywhere. I think last time Dan spoke to us, there was something like 54 transfer rumours just in 1 week. So that'd be enough to fill up 2 Manchester United. But moving on slightly, which whatever happens, whether David De Gea stays or goes or whatever, it sort of led me to this retains list. Obviously, the news that is no surprise to anyone. We knew that that Phil Jones was leaving. Obviously, he's another one who's not on the retained list. And I think really the discussion for me around Phil Jones is the discussion that I kind of wanted to have now. You look at Phil Jones and sort of how he was treated. And I talk about this mainly from our own fans. I always remember with Phil Jones, just 100% commitment, 100% passion, working hard in every single game. But yet he was always a meme. People were always taking pictures of his funny faces that he pulled whilst he was trying to put everything into making a tackle. And they tried to make him a bit of a laughing stock. And the same thing seems to happen, maybe not to quite such a degree, but it seems to be happening with other players as well. You look at David De Gea, constantly berated and bemoaned, regardless of what it is that he's done in the past. You look at Harry Maguire, not his fault, the transfer fee that he came in for, but yet berated and bemoaned for just about everything that he does. Even on his wedding day, couldn't even post a photo of his wedding without having football fans jumping on there. And I just find it really bizarre that we seem to have this habit within the fan base and within the world, really. It's not just our fan base, it's in others as well, where we seem to want to bring down our players as much as we seem to. And I said earlier about, especially as a goalkeeper, you're not necessarily going to get the time to evolve, to fit into the position. They kind of need to hit the ground running. You talk about Dan James earlier. It's exactly what happened to him. Because he was inconsistent, I think everyone could see he had talent. Everyone could see he had ability. But because he wasn't doing it every single week after week, then he wasn't good enough. We needed somebody who could come in and do it every single week. And that inconsistency has perhaps cost him a chance at Manchester United. I just kind of wondered what you guys felt about that. Do you think I'm on target with that? Or do you think there's something else going on that I don't see? Because I do get a bit worried about the way in which we treat players in general. And it only takes a game or two. I mean, we saw already somebody say it could be the worst transfer window of all time. And as I said, we're only about a week into it. So are we just getting a little bit overreactive, or is it right to react in the manner that we are? Dan, what do you reckon?
I think it's the generational change in a way. Certain players aren't given a chance before they even start. Harry Maguire would be a prime example of what we're talking about. People mention the fee quite a lot, but then instantly forget that Pep Guardiola was ready to pay 75 million for him. Chelsea wanted him for 75 million. United ended up outbidding about 3 teams to sign him, otherwise they wouldn't have signed him. So it's just a difficult one. I agree with Jones. I can remember he made a tackle. I think it was against Giroud or somebody like that. And he's on his hands and knees and he face plants the floor to head the ball away. And it is the most glorious bit of defending I've ever seen in my life. If John Terry would have done that bit of defending, they would have been lauding it on BBC News at 10 o'clock, main story, because it was fantastic. And he got turned into a meme because it was Phil Jones. And that's just sometimes what happens. I think it's a bigger discussion as well, Barry, to be honest. I think this is where football's going, and this is my worry. I've seen a lot of people say they want the Qataris basically so we can go and sign 80 million pound players and have the consistency every single week with every single position two players, and it's just that's not what football's supposed to be about. I'm hoping that something changes, whether it's Premier League rules or ownership rules, because, and I've said it before, Man United don't need a knight in shining armour. They just need someone to get rid of the debt and then be left to be ran as a football club. And I don't think fans in 2023 understand that. You saw it, not to talk about City too much, but you saw it with the celebrations of City, even winning a treble. It just didn't feel the same for the fans that were there. It's like it was expected, and I don't think any single fan in 98, 99 after that Champions League final sat there with their phones out, looking, oh, like that was expected to happen. They was all just absolutely stunned at what they had seen and what had happened in the season. And it's sort of like fans want instant success with instant impact. And if you're not going to do it, I mean, look at Sancho. Sancho's been back.
Sorry, Dan, I don't want to jump in, but I kind of just, what you've just said is absolutely spot on. And you look at that game, Man City at the end there. I watched the last 15 minutes on my hands and knees, praying to the Lord God Almighty that Inter Milan might score a goal. And that last save by Edison within minutes, you look at our one, 2 goals in injury time, and how that felt. And honestly, you watch the video of some of these City fans celebrating and they're just clapping. It's like Roman gladiator times. And like you just said, it didn't feel the same. It really did not feel the same. It felt really stale and boring. I'm not saying that because we're United and they're City and we hate each other. It felt plastic.
Yeah, it's just that they're that used to, in essence, they've gone through hardship, but they're so used to it just being, I say it every year, if Man City don't win every trophy, it's a failure, because that's the way they've built the club for the last decade. They've set themselves up for success every single time, and if a player doesn't work, they're out the door for somebody else, irrelevant of name, irrelevant of position, they'll be gone. And I think that's the fan. It's a FIFA fan of 2023, unfortunately. If we sign an Arne, by the way, who is mental, if you watch some of his games, he's absolutely mental. I've seen this goalkeeper at the halfway line tackling midfield. I'm not joking. Halfway line tackling midfielders. Imagine if he does that at Old Trafford and loses the ball and we concede to Liverpool. The fans aren't going to forgive him very quickly. Do you know what I mean? It's just, I think it's modern day football. It's changing. Like, I've seen someone mention Ryan Giggs in 98-99, something along the lines of he had 3 goals and 6 assists that season. It was something really, really low. So all kids under 20 think that he had a rubbish season in 98-99 when he was absolute figurehead, because they look at goals and assists, they look at goal contributions. It's got to be a goal and assist a game or a player's not very good. And it's sort of coming away from what football is actually about. And this is what I was saying about Sancho. Sancho has been battered this season, but if you look at his output, chances created, and stuff like that, he's actually not done bad. But the narrative is he's done really bad. He's rubbish. I think he's on par in terms of goals and assists and double chances created than Anthony. But most people have lauded and protected Anthony for his performances, but hammered Sancho. It just seems that if a meme will stick, it will stick. I saw Maguire get booed by England fans the other day, and I literally turned the football off as soon as it started because I just think it's ridiculous.
And there you go. Sarah, where's this all go with you? Because I felt for Phil Jones, and I watched the game that he played this season. It was incredibly emotional seeing him come off, and he was incredibly emotional. And what annoyed me about that game was I still felt he could do a job in defence. But it was clear that too much water had gone under the bridge at that point, and it just feels like a really rubbish way for a player to leave his career at Man United.
Yeah, it is. And I know, like, people are frustrated, when they see a player earning a certain amount of money and you never see them on the pitch. But, like, it's so easy to get caught up in that frustration, and you forget that this is not their fault, They didn't go into this career thinking, oh, I'll be injured all the time and take a nice little pay packet. Like, we have to remember how it feels for them. And you'd hear stories about Jones, people getting aggressive with Phil Jones in the street when he had his kids with him. And that's just, it's not on, I mean, people have really short memories now. And I mean, we see that in the way people are comparing our treble winning side with City's and saying, you know, oh, is Pep a better manager than Fergie and all this stuff. People have very short memories. And, you know, when you look at Phil Jones when he came to United, he had so much promise, so much potential, and it's easy for people to say, oh, he's a hopeless player, but clearly, you know, he's not. It's such a shame that his career worked out the way it did, but like it's not his fault. And even with Maguire, like, you know, you can criticize performances or whatever, but I've always thought Maguire is, well, he seems like a really decent guy. And in terms of the captaincy, you know, there was when he was away in Germany with England and he went to the Munich Memorial, he kind of took it upon himself to do that. You know, those are good actions for a captain to take. So I think people overlook stuff like that as well. But yeah, it is such a shame, the abuse that players get. And even Sancho, like, you know, people overlook players' mental health, and they just think, oh, well, you know, they earn X amount of money. What have they got to be depressed about or to have a crisis of confidence? But these are young people. We often forget how young these players are. And, you know, think back to being 19, 20, 21, and just it's a very fragile time in most people's lives. So when you've got all that pressure and you're in the spotlight at such a young age, you know, you have to remember how difficult that is.
Yeah, 100% agree. And Andrew, we'll take your points on this as well.
Yeah, I was going to say, got a lot of love for Phil Jones. It's just unfortunate the way his career at United went. I mean, a promising player, but it was just the lack of consistency on the pitch. I mean, when we signed him in 2011, I think Sir Alex, he flew out to France to see him and convinced him to join United. I think Liverpool, Chelsea and Arsenal were interested as well, but we got the deal over the line. And it just seemed with Phil Jones, injuries just never seems far away from him. So I think between 2011 and 2019, he made 216 appearances. So that was like 30 games on average a season. But whatever position he was asked to play, whether it was centre back, right back, or in the midfield, he did the job to the best of his ability. And I think every manager he worked on, besides Ten Hag, Jones earned praise from those managers. But it could be argued that when we look back on Phil Jones' career at United, we probably will remember for the games he didn't participate in rather than those he did play in. So just thinking those games he missed out on, the performances he would have put in. But it's just with Phil Jones, he put in a number of good performances, get injured, be on the sidelines, you come back, and it was like the same cycle starts to repeat itself as well. So even when Ollie first came in, I think he started 8 of the 11 games under him, and this resulted in us offering him that 4-year contract. So, and when he did sign that contract, he only featured in 16 games after that. So it's just, and from what I read, I think he suffered a knee injury in February 2020, and he was out for a year. And he said he almost considered retiring from the game, and said the toll it took on his mental health and the abuse he was getting through social media as well. I think before he left, he only recently posted on Twitter and Instagram about him leaving. Before that, he hadn't posted since 2017. So it's like certain players, they just want to come off social media and just focus on playing football. But it's just a shame for Phil Jones. It just didn't work out. I mean, I remember last January when he came back from injury and we lost to Wolves 1-0, but he put in a man of the match performance. And when he was walking off the pitch, we were singing his name. You could see how emotional it was for him as well. And even when he announced he was leaving, like those last few games, we were singing his name. So, which I know he would have appreciated. But I just hope, Phil Jones, if he carries on in the game, he finds another club and gets back onto the pitch and see, puts in those performances we know he's more than capable of. Yeah, but I was going to say, just on Harry Maguire, he does get a lot of criticism, and say with England as well, I don't know why England fans just boo him. It's just like, yeah, we won last night, so why are you just targeting certain players? I don't know whether is it because club rivalries involved in that. I just don't know. But Harry Maguire I don't know whether he will move on in the summer or not. Or whether he's going to be willing to fight for his place. But just with Martinez and Varane, they are probably the number one choice now, and Lindelof, he's probably ahead of Maguire as well. So it's just I think Harry Maguire's just got to step up now and just prove to Ten Hag, I want to get back in this side, and I'm going to prove that I'm the number one and remain as captain as well.
It is, I think, all very, very sad, and a far cry away from 12 years ago, where none other than Bobby Charlton said that he thought that Phil Jones was going to be a player in the mould of Keane, Robson and Ince for United, and that there's definitely similarities between him and Duncan Edwards. And like I say, I just find it absolutely amazing that somebody who had that level of ability and potential was sort of lambasted the way he was. So certainly from everybody here at All for United, Phil, we know you're watching. Have yourself a good career the rest of your life, and you'll always be welcome as far as we're concerned at Old Trafford. I think we're going to move on from the retained list now, really. But obviously the other big news, Axel Tuanzebe, we know that he's not going to be with us any longer. He's had some great games, but no longer with us. But let's move on to quickly Mr. Alejandro Garnacho, who had his debut for Argentina earlier on in the week. Must be delighted about that, Dan, surely. It's going to be starting next year, yes?
No.
No.
Very, very, very much in danger of rushing him too quickly. I still think he's so good off the bench that he's going to win us a lot of games next season, or change a lot of games next season. It'll be interesting. Obviously, it'll all depend on the transfer window, I'd imagine. I just think he's got age on his side, but he's absolutely electric when he comes on the pitch. He did it for a few times last season where he came off the bench and made a massive difference. And sometimes when he started, he was a little bit overwhelmed. He was underwhelming. So I think he'll get some starts next season. But I think he's got a massive role to play in if we're chasing a game, or if we need to go and finish a game off. He's going to be the guy that we turn to. He's going to have a brilliant career if he carries on. I'm so glad he finally got to play for Argentina as well. That seems to have taken ages for injury purposes and not being allowed to go to the World Cup and stuff like that. So it's good that he's finally got it.
Sarah, with that, we'll throw in also Ahmad as well, and how well he did in his loan spell at Sunderland. We've got two great youngsters there who both look primed and ready to take the next steps in the United career, don't they?
Yeah, they do. They're both very exciting players, and the thing often with these young players as well is they're fearless. They're just not afraid to. I mean, when you see Garnacho coming off the bench, the season just gone, he lights up the pitch really, and he has that ability to just take things up a notch, and that's what some of these young guys are really good at. So I think I trust Ten Hag to sort of pace things properly for them, so I'm not worried about that. But yeah, I think it's important to make sure we get the most out of them, because they're two great young players, and they'll be very important for us next season, I think. So yeah.
It's absolutely fair to me. And Andrew, are you looking forward to seeing what Mr. Garnacho and Ahmad can cook up between them for United next season?
Yeah, definitely, especially on Garnacho. I think I've said it on here before. When Garnacho gets on the ball, he gets you off your feet, and it's rare a player can get you off your feet in the stands, because every time he's like on the ball, he's trying to take on the opposition. He's trying to create something, and I'm just excited to see where he goes next season. Like Dan says, he's probably not going to start every game. There's going to be times he's going to have to come off the bench and make an impact. nearly did in the FA Cup final as well, because I know he said after that he was broken by the defeat, but he's a real reason for United to be positive going forward. And even Casemiro has been praising him as well, praising him, but preaching caution on him as well. So we can't help but get excited. But as I say, Garnacho's just like he's going to contribute a lot to this club. So for the next 10, 15 years. So, and plus, what I think will help him is now we've got strong leadership in that United dressing room, which will steer Garnacho in the right direction. That will start with Casemiro himself as well, and obviously got Fernandes as well to guide him as well. Just, even when at the end of the FA Cup final, it was Rashford lifting him up to his feet, saying, "Look, yes, we've been defeated, but we'll move on from this and we'll come back from it." But to say, excited that he's playing for Argentina as well. So from what I've seen so far at United, he's lighting up, and I think he's going to light up the world stage as well. So it's going to be interesting to see how far his career is going to go.
No, absolutely. And JR's put here, it was a nice way to end this one. I'm excited about Amade Garnacho, the new Giggs and Sharp, fingers crossed. Never should we ever forget that as much as we love Lee Sharp, he did end up at Torquay, and none of us would wish that on any of our players. So let's hope it's not quite the new Lee Sharp in that respect.
He was Torquay before us. Or have I got that wrong?
I think he went back there, didn't he? I'm going to Google that, just to be sure.
I might have got that wrong.
I hope you have, Andrew, otherwise I look like an idiot, and you've just not helped me. But there we go. Either way, let's move on to something a little bit more serious.
Just give a quick shout out to Pellistri as well. Did anybody see his assist the other day?
I can't say that I did.
Oh, he was absolutely amazing. He's done a 1-2 on the halfway line, outstripped about 3 players and passed it, and they've scored. It was such a good goal. You can see exactly why he was signed. His pace, I think he was sort of in the... Stu's mentioned it a couple of times on the channel. He was in that little number 10 role, and he was absolutely rapid over the halfway line. It was such a good goal. So I'm hoping he gets an Ahmad treatment this season, a decent loan where he can show his stuff, maybe at Championship, maybe Premier League, because I think he's got a decent future as well.
You're not wrong. And whilst we're there, I googled Lee Sharp. You're right, we did buy him from Torquay. It wasn't Torquay, I meant it was Exeter, which isn't that far away from Torquay. So either way, he didn't end in the best of ways. He played for Garforth Town in 2004. Garforth, who? Exactly my point. So yeah, you knew what I was saying. But anyway, on to more important matters, because we had the sad news this week of the passing of a legend, Mr. Gordon McQueen, at the age of 70 years old. He was bought in 1978 for a British transfer record fee of £495,000 and played under Dave Sexton. He was a bit of a legend, really. And from a personal point of view, as I've said before, I've never really done all this YouTube stuff, but I don't know if you remember it. Back in the day, there used to be a thing called You're on Sky Sports. And it was like a television phone-in show. You could ring in and chat to people that were there. And Gordon McQueen was one of the guys who was on there. And I think it was the week that Brian Clough died. And I wanted to ring in, and I did. And obviously had the chance to speak to Gordon very, very briefly. And he was a little bit of a gentleman. He was a lovely bloke. It's very, very sad to see that Gordon has gone at the age of 70. And everybody here at All for United obviously says rest in peace and is thinking about his family. Hayley McQueen, obviously, from Sky Sports News as well. But I think the best way we can respect Gordon McQueen here is to talk about how it is you can become a Manchester United legend when you've also played for Leeds United, because there's only one other person I can think of that's really managed to do that. It's not Lee Sharp, by the way, who did go to Leeds. It's, of course, Eric Cantona. So, Dan, how has he managed to tread that horrific divide between Manchester and Leeds and yet still come out of it being the absolute legend of a footballer that he was?
Well, it's a little bit before my time, but he must have been an absolute cracking player.
But he was. Brilliant defender.
Absolutely. To be able to do that, he must have been an absolute cracking player. So, yeah, it's a little bit before my time, to be honest. I've not seen, obviously, many videos from that sort of era. I'm just... it's one of them. I was reading about it briefly, obviously after it happened, and it's just such a shame. It was after a long-term illness as well. So, I mean, it's just a sad thing all around.
It is incredibly sad. And if it's before his time, it's probably before yours as well, Sarah. I mean, to be fair, it was before mine as well. You know, I was only born in 1982, which was 4 years after he came to us. But again, the thing about United fans, we know our history. So what's your thoughts on Gordon? And again, how you tread that horrible divide between Leeds and Manchester United?
Yeah, it is definitely before my time, but I was indoctrinated at an early age thanks to my dad. So he has very fond memories of him. And I actually told him the other day, I said, one of your favorite players has died. And he was very upset by that. But he has very fond memories of him, and Joe Jordan as well, another Scot who crossed that divide from Leeds. And I was reading an interview with Joe, I think it was from February this year. And he mentioned that at the time, a lot of Leeds fans were very upset with him because they thought that he had convinced Gordon McQueen to make the move. But he said he pretty much convinced himself because he was desperate to come to United. So I thought that was interesting. Yeah, very sad as well. Dementia obviously is a very unfortunate illness that a lot of ex-footballers have suffered from. I mean, Bobby Charlton now as well. And then Jack, who's a legend in these parts for his time managing Ireland, another former Leeds player. But he passed away from dementia as well. So it's very sad to see. And hopefully, well, no doubt, a lot of people who remember him playing will have very fond memories of him.
Absolutely. The world's coming at me today. They really are. Apparently, Dennis Irwin also started off at Leeds. So did Rio Ferdinand. I don't know what else you guys want me to say here, but there's loads of you just popping in with people that have managed to play for Leeds as well.
The one I remember actually was Alan Smith. I remember that being very controversial. Yeah.
I mean, whenever I think of Alan Smith, all I can think about was how he broke his leg when that football smashed up against it. But there we go. Andrew, your thoughts, Gordon McQueen?
Yeah, I was going to say, it's sad to learn that he passed away this week. I mean, when United signed him in 1978, it was a British record fee of 500,000. So, I said it was the talk of football all that summer. So, I say he was a no-nonsense defender, and even his time at Leeds, he replaced Jack Tarleton as the centre back. So, another great defender. And you could say a bit ironic that both men, suffered, from their dementia as well. And you think the era they played in the 70s and 80s, it was just like, it was one of the most physical, periods of British football. So I think those type of defenders, reputations went before them as well. So I mean, certain players could probably beat them with skill and vision, but if you wanted to mix it with them, they'd soon, like, let's say, batter you black and blue. So, but it was like, yeah. And saying McQueen, I think he played about 184 times for us over 7 seasons. So he won the FA Cup, and I think he was runner-up in the League Cup and the FA Cup again. So, but yeah, he had a great career, and it's just a sad loss to the footballing world.
Absolutely. Well, there we go. That's Gordon McQueen. And again, thank you for your service, young man. So, the fixtures have been released. And listen, it's always hard to get excited over the fixture release, isn't it? Because it's only the same, really, until the season begins. And then it all just changes as Sky take over and move things about. But we can still get ourselves a little bit excited, which is what we've done. So, here we go. We have got the first 5 fixtures. And there they are, scrolling along the bottom of your screen like some sort of, I don't know, technological marvel. Wolves at home is the first one. And that'll be playing on a Monday night, by the way. It's not a Saturday or a Sunday fixture. It's a Monday opening day, which for me is absolutely rubbish. But there we go. So we've got Wolves then, Spurs away, Forest at home, Arsenal away, Brighton at home. They're the first 5. Which one of those 5 are you looking forward to the most? And how do you feel about a Monday kickoff? Dan?
I'm not happy about the Monday kickoff. Now I'm going to have to make sure I'm not at work. Yeah, that throws a spanner in the works. Honestly, I'm not overly happy with the 5 fixtures to start in particular. The one I'm looking forward to most is probably Arsenal, because it's going to give us a barometer of where we are pretty early in the season in terms of fight challenge. But I don't think it's a fantastic start for us in terms of fixtures. It's I just don't know where to start with it, to be honest, because on paper, I wouldn't say we're going to win all of them. And then we don't know what Brighton are going to do next season in terms of the transfer window, etc. They could look sharp. I'm not overly pleased with it, to be honest. I've had a look into quite a few of the fixture lists as well. And some teams always seem to get a very simple start on paper compared to others. But I'm really looking forward to the Arsenal game. I think if we can give a good account of ourselves in the first 3 games, it's a really good early chance to lay down a message and show that it's not going to be an easy season for anybody.
Sarah, how you feeling about
that? Yeah, not too great either. I mean, Spurs away, Arsenal away, those are tricky anyway. And then Brighton, obviously, they've had a great season as well. So that's, it's hard at the start of the season because it's difficult to have high expectations now because you often have a freak result, like the 4-0 against Brentford, and everybody was calling for Ten Hag's head prematurely, of course. But yeah, I don't see us winning all 5 either. Now, obviously, I'd love to be proved wrong, but yeah, it's a tricky start. I don't know which one I would say I'm looking forward to the most, to be honest. I don't know. It might be a hindsight thing where I say, oh, that was a great game, pretend I was looking forward to it after the fact.
Andrew, how are they looking for you and that Monday night start?
So I'm going to have to rush from work to get there. So I haven't got managed to get the day off. So yeah, I'll be rushing from 5 o'clock to Old Trafford. But we're having to wait longer than every other team with the Monday start. But probably just means that United can't ruin a sunny August weekend like they did last season. But I think it's the first time we kicked off on a Monday night since 2012. And that game we lost 1-0 to Everton. But that year we went and won the Premier League title. So facing Wolves at home on the opening day of the season, it's a pretty good fixture to start with. And obviously we beat them 2-0 at Molineux at the end of last season. So, and like I say, we can see how all the other teams, start and say it's going to be a good game to look forward to as well. So we got a big away test early, and that was probably our Achilles heel last season, was our away form against the teams in the top half of the table. And I know Ten Hag's, that's something we'll have to fix. I mean, we got Tottenham away in the second game and the way at Arsenal on the 2nd of September. So 2 big away games in the first 4 fixtures will be challenging. It's an opportunity to record, an important win early on. I mean, obviously the game against Tottenham, if he's still there, Harry Kane, which is probably likely, then, and if he doesn't come to us, we can make him regret not pushing for a transfer to us. But on the other hand, the match against Arsenal is a good opportunity to lay down a marker early on as well, because the Gunners will be looking to be at the top of the table as well. And so you could call that a big 6-pointer. In terms of which of the first 5 I'm looking forward to the most, it's probably the first game at home. It's more than just the matches, catching up with people you haven't seen for a couple of months, finding out what they've been up to, and and thinking how we're going to do over the course of the season. So yeah, the first game of the season I'm looking forward to, roll on August the 14th.
Yeah, it definitely looks like it's going to be interesting. John's reckon the away games are tough. Home games, we'd expect them to win. Brighton could be tough, but we'll be fine, I reckon. More concerned about the running. Don't worry, John, we're going to get to that. But just before we do, here are some big fixtures. Certainly that I thought were big fixtures anyway, because they're the ones I look out for the minute we open up. When do we play City? When do we play Liverpool? What's the Boxing Day festive fixtures? And that's what we've got. So City there, as you can see, we've got them in November, just before Halloween. So let's hope that's not a thing. and the 2nd of March as well. Aston Villa on Boxing Day. Nothing on New Year's Day. It's like they've just tried to take all the joy out of football. Nothing on New Year's Day. What's going on? We're not on the opening day of the season. Nothing on New Year's Day. Potentially nothing until almost the middle of January anyway when the FA Cup kicks off. Nightmare. We get the trip to number 7 Kenilworth Road on the 17th of February against Luton. And, of course, Liverpool we've got on the 16th of December and on the 6th of April. Which fixtures do you look out for, Dan, when you first see the fixture list? And also your thoughts on, like I say, the festive fixtures and Luton?
I normally look out for the Liverpool games just because the entire family support Liverpool and they can be a bit of a nightmare for me. So I tend to try and make plans, hide, the usual. But hopefully, different story this season. It can't get as bad as it got last season in terms of Liverpool games. So fingers crossed. I mean, I hope it can't get worse than it did last season for the Liverpool games. I'm looking forward to the Luton one, to be honest. I know a few lower league fans that have been there, and apparently it's an absolute, just like a fun house, the way you get in and out. So it's going to be interesting to see our Sky coverage for a start. The City games I'm not overly fussed about, to be honest. I expect them to win it next season. I expect them to go far in every competition next season, unless there's some sort of massive drop-off and they don't go and spend on players they don't need. It's just one of them, innit? I also think Villa are going to do all right next season. I think they could be, if I was going to go early, I think they're going to be a big surprise next season, Villa. I don't know. I think Emery, for me, was really pushing manager of the season talk. So, yeah, I just think I'm looking forward to the season. I'm bored already that football isn't on anymore. It needs to hurry up and come back.
Getting a lot of love here, Dan. Dan the man. Also, people feeling sorry for you about being in a room for a family full of Scousers, but never mind. Sarah, what do you look out for, and what's your thoughts on the general fixture list?
Yeah, I'm the same. Liverpool's always the first one I look out for. It's Liverpool. What more can you say? One of my earliest memories of football is asking my dad which team do we like, and he was saying United, and then I was saying what do we think of Liverpool, and he was like, no, we don't like Liverpool. So that's always just what it comes back to for me. Arsenal, I think, as well. I think it's just because of how strong that rivalry was going back a few years. I went through a brief period of not really caring too much about Arsenal, but I think my hatred is coming back again now. So I always look out for that one. And City as well. But yeah, Liverpool will be the main one. Yeah, I'm intrigued whenever there's a club promoted, especially one we haven't really seen too much, apart from the clubs that come up and go down a lot. I'm always intrigued by those fixtures, and yeah, Luton's ground looks like a lot of fun. I'd love to go there someday and see what that's like. Villa could be tricky. I would expect them to do well as well. And then another weird one that I look out for is Bournemouth, purely because I used to live in Bournemouth, so that's where I went to university. So I always just sort of look out to see how they're doing.
Fair play. Andrew, it's going to be the same for you, but I've got to say, I've been to Kenilworth Road, and it is... Everybody says it's fun. It's not. So how can I explain this to you best? So if this is Kenilworth Road, right, this is the pitch. They made us park as part of the media team here, right? We then had to walk all the way down the road, down an alleyway, if you please, to come all the way back round here, to come up here to get into the media area. It was absolutely unbelievable. They made me do a lap of the pitch when they could have just built a gate to get you to where you needed to get to. Since then, Andrew, I've watched videos. When you come into the turnstiles, like you've literally got number 7, number 8, gate 1, gate 2, gate 3, number 9, number 10. It's literally in the middle of houses. You go into the turnstiles, you're going up around the stairs, and you can see into people's gardens. You just look at, hello, how are you? Sunbathing there. How much are you looking forward to going to Luton? Because I've got to be honest, I can't think of anything worse.
Well, fingers crossed I get a ticket in the ballot and I'm able to go. So I'm looking forward to it. If I do get a ticket, looking forward to going to Luton. In the playoff final, I was hoping Coventry were going to beat them because Coventry's not far from me. So I was hoping an away day to Coventry is a bit shorter journey than all the way down to Luton. But yes, nice when a promoted team comes up to play them as well. But let's say in terms of the fixtures, what I look out for is usually, are we at home on the opening day and the last day of the season? Same for Christmas and New Year. Are we at home? Which one are we at? Boxing Day at home or New Year's at home? And then Liverpool. I'm like, when are we playing Liverpool? And are we at home first or away first? But yeah, those are the ones I look out for the most. But I'm just looking on our fixture list. Our tougher games are fairly well spread out until you get to the month of December, which is going to be quite tricky. I mean, we start the month away at Newcastle, then we've got Chelsea, Bournemouth, and then we face Liverpool away. And I think, if I remember looking at the date of it, it'll be exactly 5 years to the day we lost to them in 2018, and then it resulted in Mourinho getting sacked. So, and obviously, we want to avenge the humiliation we suffered last year. So, and obviously, we got a few more tricky fixtures in December as well, like Villa on Boxing Day. Well, I'm hoping that will remain on Boxing Day because obviously I think Amazon have all the Christmas fixtures, don't they? So they might move them around, but I'm hoping it stays on. Nothing more better than going to football on Boxing Day. So, but if we can come out of December in good shape, then we probably can achieve a lot in 2024 as well.
Yeah, I think so. We're going to go to the final 5 games. Just to point this out, though, to be fair to Luton, they were still confident in 2014. The world forgets that outside of the Premier League, Luton were actually a big club. They were in the top leagues as well. Let's not forget they had a massive fall from grace before they had this meteoric rise. I'm pretty sure they won the EFL Cup before, the League Cup. So back in the 80s. So they're not by any stretch of the imagination a bunch of minnows as such. But yeah, they just have a better ground. Absolute madness. Right, on to the final 5, because this is our run-in. And what a run it is. Newcastle at home, Burnley at home, Palace away, then potentially Arsenal at home and Brighton away. If we were needing the points for whatever, whether it be a title win, whether it be for finishing top 4, how do you feel about that as your final 5? Because judging by how it was this season, Newcastle aren't going to be a pushover. They finish in the top 4. Burnley are never easy. They never give goals away without working hard for it. Crystal Palace have worked hard this season. Arsenal, as you've already said, Sarah, back on the up and therefore stoking our fires of hatred once again. And, of course, Brighton, as somebody said earlier on, becoming a bit of a bogey team for us at the moment. So, what do we think?
Brighton are a bogey team for everybody at the minute. They're literally just proper up there, aren't they? It's okay because we're going to qualify for the top 4 at Newcastle. Well, when we beat Newcastle, and then we're going to win the league when we beat Arsenal. So that's it, sorted. No worries. As John would say, confident.
Like that, Sarah.
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard to say without knowing how all of those teams will have done and the position will be. But if it was kind of neck and neck and we as you say, we needed the points, I would be kind of a bit worried about that, depending on the form of the other teams, of course. But if we're doing well, then I'd say bring it on. I mean, it's the end of the season. You need a bit of drama, I suppose.
You certainly do. I think we definitely have that. Andrew?
Yeah, so they're pretty much all tough fixtures as well. I'm just thinking, looking at one Palace away as well, and they always seem to give us a game. Even like this season, was it
93rd minute free kick?
Yeah, free kick.
Elise?
Yes, and Casemiro getting booked and was like, he's out for the Arsenal game next, and we're like, no. I was like, bro, I knew why Ten Hag kept him on, but it was like, we just all hanged our heads when the yellow card came out for Casemiro. Was like, that's going to affect us, which it did in the Arsenal game in the end. But yeah, I'll be confident. You know, so we've just said it's just how those teams in the final 5 games have fared themselves and how we fared across the season as well. So yeah, I'm confident. You know, United will push through as well. I hope we might be able to challenge for the title, but I'm just saying hope. I'm not saying for definite, but it depends what's happening over the summer, who goes and who comes in. It's just, let's say, it's a big summer for United and how we're all going to fare in the upcoming season.
The thing about the fixture list as well, if you look at it, is going into them last 5 games, if you're there or thereabouts, you've got a real opportunity to change it as well. So it's in our hands with them games coming up, because you'd imagine most of them teams are going to do quite well. I'm interested to see what's going off at Palace, because is Hodgson stayed or is he gone?
Well, I think he was end of the season. Well, his contract was till the end of the season. And
that's going to be an interesting one, because I don't know where they're going to go. They might try a new young manager again and it not work, and Hodgson's back for that game.
Because when Hodgson went last time, I think the average, it was one of the oldest average age squads in the Premier League. Vieira came in, he changed up, made it it became one of the youngest average age squads. And I don't think Palace maybe should have given Vieira a bit more time, but
yeah, I can remember his fixture running. It was absolutely mental for like 10 games, and they brought Hodgson back in just when they had an ease up of like 5 or 6. And I actually stuck up for Hodgson and said that I think he'd do a good job, and he did. But you would think Vieira should have been given the chance. But going into them 5 games, some of them games are going to be absolutely massive. I'd imagine the Newcastle and Arsenal one in particular, they're going to have a big say on top 4. In fact, I'm saying top 4. It's top 5, is it not next season? Correct me if I'm wrong.
I think it's top 5, yeah.
Champions League format changes, so it's top 5.
Top 5.
So, yeah, we're going to have some big points needed in those 5 games for sure.
I was just thinking Newcastle and Arsenal, the big.
I was going
to say Newcastle and Arsenal, those are at home, so slight advantage. And our home form, like last season, was like, we didn't. The only game we lost was Brighton. Yeah. We didn't lose any other league games at home, so that will be the key thing as well, keeping that league form at home, in good 100%. So yeah.
Sounds like it's going to be fun. But you mentioned something there, Andrew. You said hopefully we'd be fighting for the title, and I think that's the big thing. I'd never want to be Arsenal. I'd never want to be that team that just goes, well, as long as we finish in the top 4. That's not satisfactory. You should be starting every season with the hope of some form of glory. And it's with that we switch almost seamlessly to this question, because we've got the Champions League coming up. It's back. We don't have to worry about Thursday evenings anymore. We can have a little think about a Tuesday or a Wednesday and the joys that we could possibly have from this amazing trophy. And we're only in pot 2, which means one of these 7 behemoths are going to be in the pot with us, in the league with us. And I wondered which of these 7 you feel we could comfortably beat. Because I say comfortably, but you know what I mean. Have a good chance of, because what we don't want is to be finishing our league and be 3rd again and have to drop back down into the Europa League. Really, we don't really want to be doing that. So, is there any there that you look at? So, for example, I look at Barcelona. I don't particularly feel like I want them. I don't particularly want Bayern Munich, but Benfica, Feyenoord, Napoli, I feel quite reasonable about. PSG, we've beaten them before. Sevilla, just as far away from us as possible, I think, really, would be what I would say about them. What do you reckon, Dan?
I want Sevilla. It sounds absolutely mental, but I want them in the group, and I want to beat them twice, and I want them to drop out completely or into the Europa League or whatever, and just actually get one over on them for a change, because it seems like they're our new European rivals, to be honest. Like, if we got Barcelona, I'd back us to beat them. I think they're all difficult games. I actually think pot 2 is stronger than pot 1 on paper. When you look at the teams, it's really strange how they format it. Some teams going to end up with an easy group again. I don't know. I'm just glad to be back in the Champions League. I can't wait for the anthem, for everything. It's just gonna be amazing. If we do finish third, and I honestly would prefer to finish fourth. The only reason why I want to finish third if he's going to play literally a team full of kids in the Europa League for a match day after that. But I'm just hoping for a steady. I always say the same: 3 home wins and a draw away, and you're pretty much through. So if we can do that, fantastic.
Interesting. John's agreeing with you. Whereas Buck says, likewise, I hate Sevilla, absolutely, and their oranges. What about you, Sarah? How do you feel about that? And looking at those, are there any there that you think are favourites for the Champions League?
Well, I'm a coward. I don't want Sevilla. I think I just don't want the hassle. Although, send them back into the Europa League. They love winning the Europa League, so just let them keep doing that and keep getting knocked out maybe of the Champions League. But no, Barcelona. I mean, yeah, I would fancy us to beat them as well. I mean, I think the games we played against them last season were some of our best performances, certainly the first game anyway. So I'd quite like Feyenoord, to be honest, or maybe Napoli. Yeah, I never like playing Bayern Munich. I don't quite know why. Yeah, but those, maybe Feyenoord or Napoli are the ones I would go for.
Interesting. Andrew, I wonder if you'd have a slightly different sort of feeling towards this. I mean, I know that you don't have to be a season ticket holder to get a ticket for the Champions League all the time, because quite often it used to be, certainly back in the day, that United season ticket holders weren't worried too much about the group games. They wanted them more when it came to the knockout games, which is how I managed to get my tickets to go and watch United draw 0-0 on a wonderful Tuesday evening against Lille. But I just sort of wonder what your thoughts would be, because for a match-going fan, I can imagine the opportunity to see the likes of Barcelona and Bayern Munich is vastly preferable to watching, I don't know, Napoli or Feyenoord. But surely the inner fan must come out and go, but we want to get past the group stages, so actually just let's have the dross if possible, please, and get through.
Yeah, I was like, when they brought names of the teams, instantly I looked at Barcelona and Bayern Munich. I thought, I want to play you in the Champions League group stage. I'm just reminded of 99 I was. I'm just thinking, that group of death, and because we had them both as well. And I'm just thinking, there's been some great European nights against those two teams as well. So, but as you're saying, logically, if we want to get through the groups, then you'd say probably Benfica or Feyenoord. There's teams to face as well. But I'm just fancy. I just want to take on Barcelona and Bayern Munich, because in the Champions League, if you want to win it, you've got to beat what's in front of you, whether it's Barcelona, PSG, or any other team. You've just got to say, want to be the best, you've got to beat the best as well. They're all there for a reason. So, but yeah. No, I was just thinking, knowing I'll look in the draw, it probably will be Seville, but I hope maybe Barcelona or Bayern Munich.
Well, we're not going to go deep into this conversation. I'm going to go for one of Barry's traditional yes or no answers, and we'll see how many words people can get in outside of that yes and no. But do you genuinely think, could Man United win the Champions League next season? Dan?
Yes.
Ooh. Sarah?
No.
Andrew?
Yes.
I feel like the villain now.
No, I think I'd probably have gone with you, Sarah. I'm not convinced that we could. Not based on how we have done. But hey, I'd love to. I'd absolutely love to. So there we go. We're on to the final part of the show, which shouldn't take us too long because it's one of those awkward ones. But it's the takeover. It's still rumbling on. It's like a fart in a lift, and it just won't disappear. Honestly, it's got to end at some point, surely. And what I found really interesting, it was Jennifer, in fact, mentioned earlier on about the treble. She said that ours were full of academy graduates, whereas the City one was bankrolled by Saudi Arabia, effectively. And what I found really interesting about that was that could be us in a couple of years' time if we do get taken over by Qatar. Equally, if we get taken over by Sajim, some people aren't going to be happy about that. I guess really where I wanted to just go with our last little segment here is how we're feeling about this takeover. Is it annoying us as much as it's annoying me? The fact that we're trying to prepare for a new season and we're not sure whether we're going to have a full budget, if we know what's going to be happening, is that going to cost us as we go down the road? And I suppose just briefly on that as well, yeah, could you stomach if we, spend all this time we had to go at Chelsea for being taken over by Abramovich and being funded by all money? We had the exact same thing to say about City. Are we going to be all right? Are we going to feel okay if that then becomes us? And how do we get out of that? Dan?
It just comes back to me for what I was saying earlier. I'm a bit worried about where football's going. Obviously, there's a mass uproar about the Super League and what that would do to football. And any owner that's going to come into Man United and really invest heavy amounts of money you're really going to get to a situation where nobody will ever break into the top few teams in England. I don't want it to be that way. It's just a personal opinion. Whether it's Qataris who take over or SJR, I'm not overly fussed. I still sit on the opinion of if you take the debt away from the club, you can probably afford to put the money into the infrastructure yourself as a club and not need owner funding because the club's that successful. On the opposite side of it, if they do decide to, Newcastle's an example. They've just got a shirt sponsorship that's very, very high. And they're saying, oh, well, they've not done anything. And from the sounds of it, they haven't done anything wrong, but they've gone from having a shirt sponsor that's under 10 million to over 25. And it's because of the Saudi owners that they've got it. If you wanted to come into Man United and do that, you could arguably go with a company that you own and sponsor us for 70 million on our shirts. And it wouldn't be against market inflation because we're back in the Champions League, etc. I just hope football doesn't go that way because it takes away the essence of what football should be about, which is players coming through youth academies as well. If you just go in and buy 100 million players every summer in 3-4 positions, I genuinely hope the Premier League step in and do some sort of cap. I can't see it. I think it is going to go the way it's going to go. And if we're going to stay up with the likes of Man City, we're going to have to turn into that team that go and have 200 million players in each position. It's a difficult one. We said earlier on one of the shows that I would prefer to Jim Ratcliffe, but honestly, it's the same. There's no billionaire in the world that's a billionaire because they're straight up nice people. They're a billionaire for a reason because they're ruthless in whatever they do. So I hope it's sorted quickly because it's getting annoying. I just hope the club's left to run itself because we don't need a knight in shining armor. We just need to be left alone with no debt above the club.
Jennifer's put, the politics of a Qatari ownership bothers me. Non-football vibes and undercurrent will distract from the game. As Dan says, though, this seems to be the game at the moment. It's whoever's got the most money is the people that run the clubs and therefore run the game. Sarah, how do you feel about everything that's going on at the moment?
It's something I don't like to think about. I just don't like the way it's going. I think it is inevitable, unfortunately, but I don't like it. I think it's killing the spirit of the game. Can football go back to the way it used to be? No, but I think a lot of people wish it could. I would agree with Jennifer. I'm not sure how I feel about Qatari ownership. Like I take issue with a lot of, things about the human rights record and everything and just that sort of thing. And I have been concerned about the impact on our women's team. And I don't like how, there's a lot of division in the fan base over this, people who are pro Qatar and then people who seems like a lot of people who don't want it are, it's getting very aggressive on social media, particularly. It's like, well, then if you don't want Qatar, you don't want what's best for the club or whatever. And I don't like that at all. So I'm really tired of the whole thing. I mean, on the one hand, yes, we do need to compete with the likes of City, but it doesn't sit right with me. I mean, we have criticized, all of this stuff, and then the 115 charges and all that sort of thing. I don't really want us to become that, but I do think, as Dan said, it's going that way. So there's a lot of things that we might just have to stomach somehow.
It's a very interesting one. Andrew, I'm going to ask your opinion as well, but I'm going to ask yours also from a slightly different one, because I've been thinking for a while now, if I've really got the desire to care about men's football at the moment. Like, it's just getting so staggeringly ridiculous and so staggeringly elitist. They're horrific. It's not what football used to be. We've just spoken about Gordon McQueen. And if you go back to what football was, it was just a proper game played by proper people that cared about the game and that wanted to play football. Nowadays, that doesn't seem to be happening. And I know you're an avid watcher of the women's game, just like I am too. And I almost wonder if this persistent avenue that seems to be going down by the men is going to lead to almost the ultimate demise, because it will lead to a growth, perhaps, in women's football supporting, because people might just go, I've had enough of all this rubbish, and just pull themselves over to where the women are playing, because you get that passion. Everything that you used to get in the grassroots football and that you used to get when you were watching men's football years ago seems to be more apparent in the women's game than it does in the men's game at the moment, because it's just all too fantastical and beyond belief. Whereas you just don't seem to get that in the women's game at the moment. Well, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but like I say, there are things that could happen. I can probably just about stomach being overtaken by the Qataris, but there's other things that we don't talk about on this channel that if did happen, I could honestly see myself just saying, do I really want to be involved in this football club if they can do that?
So it's such a difficult one with the ownership. There's good and bad in every owner. So we just, let's say this takeover seems to be, well, they said, we'd have it done in like the first quarter of the year. Well, that went and came, and it's like, well, it could go into the new season, dragging on. Like, well, this needs to be sorted soon. It's just, we can't have this dragging on and on and on. And I think a podcast I'm listening to, was it How to Buy a Football Club, and they're tracking the United takeover, and just says the Qataris are the ones in pole position, and it's whether, I think they said the day Sir Jim Ratcliffe would table a new offer to counter, the Sheikh's, what he's put in now. So, but they're not ruling it out. But literally, the Glazers have, smoked out the Qataris for, a bid that was to the price they wanted, and the Qataris have gone, yes, we'll give you what you want. But the thing is, with Sir Jim Ratcliffe, he wasn't bidding for 100% of the club, which means I know he's going to come in and then, the Glazers be phased out, but how much more the money that Sir Jim Ratcliffe and Ineos are going to put in, how much more do they have in their back pocket after that? It's like, well, has this been budgeted for if the Glazers are going to be phased out? But I think what they also said is the way the Glazers have run the bidding for the sale of the club is very abnormal from a usual business world. So I'm saying, labelled it as crazy. So it was like, other businesses that probably would have been sold and they've been in the hands of a new owner long ago. But as I said, it's not normal in any way normal. So I think it's almost like, to those two prospective buyers, is what's Manchester United worth to them as well, how much they're prepared to pay as well. So And from what I read, the Sheikh had registered his 92 Foundation in as a UK company. So I'm just thinking, is he, is he the forefront to buy it now? Is, why register a company here in the UK if you're not going to, going to be taken over? But it's one of those. From a fan's perspective, I'm just like, I go there to support United. I just want to see us play well and, give 100% on the pitch, whether we win, lose or draw. The players that want to come and play for us. It's just, I just hope whoever the new owner comes in, just come in and just let it, don't touch anything for a year. Let the people who are working there, carry on with their jobs, get used to the way Manchester United is run. And then after a year, then you can implement, the changes as well. But I'll be happy when it's all over. But I say my focus is on the football, football side of things.
Yeah, I admit I did become very disillusioned with the men's game for quite a while, and it was really watching the women's team that sort of kept me, in the midst of it really kept up my football interest. There's a lot of it that just depresses me when I think too much about it, and a lot of stuff where you do you support a team for life through thick and thin, but there's just a lot of things going on at the moment that would really challenge that and just make you think, is it worth it? So yeah, a lot to think about.
I was going to just say, like last season with the men's and how that season went, our women's side was the one that kept, I enjoyed watching the women's side more than the men's side. I was just thinking with the men's, it was just like disillusionment, and I was like, well, what are we going to get today? Whereas sometimes the question the men's is like, are you putting in that 100% effort? Where with the women's, it was like they're going out on the pitch and giving their all. It was like, I say, it just made me fall in love with the team even more. So it's just, we'll just have to see where it all goes.
We certainly will. And we still don't know. Could be Qatar, could be Sir Jim, could be Bob the Builder for all we know. Nobody's telling us anything. So we'll have to wait.
Can he fix it?
Let's hope so. If anyone can, Bob can. So let's be hoping. Good old Scoot Muck and Dizzy. That'll be awesome. Well, we've come to the end of another Saturday Night Live. It's time for everyone to go to bed, get their beauty sleep, and be up on Sunday for another day of no football. It's a bit boring, this break in between. We've got the Women's World Cup starting soon, but I don't know about you lot. I can't wait for football to be back again as we know it. Listen, it's been a lovely show. Brilliant to have you all on. Dan, as ever, thank you for your attendance as co-host once again. Much appreciated having you on each week. Where can people find you?
Quick happy birthday. Oh, fucking hell, I'm tired now. Happy Father's Day to everybody for tomorrow as well. I'm hoping for breakfast in bed. Whether that comes true or not, probably not. And if it does, it's
what I would do is put this show on
in the living room. That's a good idea. Yeah.
And then you might catch that bit at the end. You're already asleep by that point. It's like, we'll do that.
That is a good idea.
And maybe gets us another view as well.
Yeah, just on Twitter as always, and Twitch or Kick, depending on what I'm doing. But yeah, I'll be back next week as well, hopefully.
Absolutely. And please do like and subscribe if you're new around here. It's been great to have you all along. Andrew, lovely to have you again. Thank you. Where can people find your inane ramblings on Twitter?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter, Andrew_Wall. So that's where you can find me.
There you go. And there might be inane ramblings, but what he also has is a really good mobile phone camera. And you don't half get some good pictures, Andrew. So definitely worth following this guy to find some of those. He does produce a lot of pictures that we use here on All For United. And Sarah, of course, the author of the Red Devil blog, I believe. Where can people find you?
Well, that's my personal Twitter handle right there. Or you can find the blog at Red Devil Women, and it's reddevilwomen.com. And as always, anyone who wants to contribute anything, just send me a message.
There we go. So there we go. We have done it for another week. We'll be back next Saturday where we'll talk about all the things that are going on. It wasn't exactly a slow week for news this week. Probably will be next week. But that's how we roll. We'll find something to talk about and we'll look forward to doing it with you. See you soon.